So what other metaphors or not metaphors, rather, what other myths, Trisha, are there out there that we can help give some kind of context to? Because, the headlines get the clicks. So fasting causes muscle. I know there's a few other ones. Where do you think we should go next?
Is fasting unsafe for women specifically? Because,
What is pop culture? What is society saying about this right now? I know you always being the VP of marketing at Burn, you've always got your ear to the streets and kind of what the trends are and what's going on. What is society saying about this?
Well, it's unsafe in the fact I think we hear all the time from celebrities, and Jessica Biel most recently went viral because she was talking about how she had to reduce the amount of food that she was consuming to look a certain way for a role. And I think for women, we're always trying to fit this certain mold of what we think we're supposed to look like. There's all these fast fixes that we know, GLP-1s, et cetera, to help us lose weight. So I think fasting is unsafe for women. From what I heard is I also think that it's bad from a mental perspective, but then I also know that I've heard it's unsafe because of our hormonal, like for our hormones and to reproduce and to make sure we have, consistent periods. So I'm assuming that that's where all of this kind of ties into this myth is it unsafe for women?
Yeah, obviously, and I'm not going to be like a resident expert on this, but what I will say is fasting is not for certain types of people, and a lot of times those the people that it's not for are women because of fertility and reproductive function. What I do know is that the HPG is what it's called. I believe that's a specific it's what is it called? What does HPG stand for again, Chelsea? Can you type that in? I think it's hypothalamic pituitary something or other. Basically it's like the female physiology is more sensitive to energy. So if the male body is like a sports car, well, the female body is like a more finely tuned sports car. If you can kind of think about it that way, because of the hormonal and reproductive functions. When I step back and look at it from like a eating disorder perspective or a mental perspective, obviously there's a conversation to be had about, people that should not be fasting. In my opinion, fasting should be something that is an advanced strategy for you. It should, like with anything else, you don't want to go just from 0 to 100 and jump kind of from one ditch of maybe an eating disorder, anorexia, bulimia, into fat. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it's already an extreme version of fasting and a calorie deficit. So yeah, I think that one is pretty obvious. Like, the chronic caloric restriction can really disrupt anybody mentally, but women are more prone to eating disorders than men, generally speaking. What does HPG stand for again?
It's hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. So yeah, that's like I'm not a doctor. That's beyond my scope here. But that is when I read, and I will dive more into this so I can be more informed in the future. But what I do know is underage, like a kind of adolescent, individuals who aren't fully grown yet. We want to make sure that we're getting a more even keel nutrient intake throughout the day. Women who are pregnant, people in general, especially women with chronic calorie deficits. There are fringe cases in which on both genders we should not be fasting at all. But at the end of the day, when you take a step back and you're talking about Gen Pop, the general population, there's a difference, right? Because the female physiology just began being studied in like the early 90s. Until then, women were treated like small men, and that's obviously not true. The hormonal profile is much different. And so we don't have as much research historically on the female physiology as we do the male physiology. But what I will say is the National Institute of Health, NIH, has since the early 90s really gone deep into making sure that both genders have independent studies because food, hormones, calories, the effect of those calories on our hormones are different markedly in males and in females. And so when you think about fasting generally being safe and effective, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that I can find that says, say, for an average woman who's psychologically sound, you know, having a restricted calorie window, because that's really all fasting is. It's a restricted calorie window. And I don't find anything that is concrete that says no, women shouldn't fast and men should fast. There just happens to be, because of their hormonal profiles, there happens to be more types of women who shouldn't consider fasting because of the physiological makeup.
And I think at the end of the day, it's remembering that this is intentional work. It's not starving. So it's not good for anyone to starve themselves.
Right.
It's like that's for me. It's a tool that you can use in your toolbox to make sure that you're also down the road fueling your body properly. So that makes sense.
Chelsea.
Something else that people have asked about on the Instagram, but also as I was doing research on this episode for you guys, the effects of cortisol. Like a lot of women don't want to fast because they're afraid it's going to affect their cortisol. I think that's something that we can also talk about too.
Yeah, I can touch on that real quick. So cortisol is this like evil hormone that's going to eat all your muscles and it's going to, you know, create this muscle loss. And guys, gals, what I want to do is just level set the conversation around cortisol, okay? There are two kind of versions that two lenses in which you can look through for cortisol. Number one is acute, intentional, micro releases of cortisol, okay? Intermittent fasting puts stress on the body. Working out puts stress on the body. Cold plunging puts stress on the body, whether you're a male or female. And that's voluntary. And that it's a requirement for proper repair and proper recovery and proper muscle building to have acute micro releases of cortisol. So it can't be cortisol is the end all be all. You know, it's the stress hormone. We all know that, but doesn't stress have such a negative energy around it when it comes to the clips on the internet? Even the doctors out there aren't deciphering between acute micro releases of cortisol, like when you train really hard for 45 minutes, like when you do an intermittent fasting protocol with a window of, 20 and 4 or 18 and 6 or even 12 and 12. Cortisol, the stress hormone, becomes a problem when it's prolonged, just like anything else. If you're going to be extreme and have this, like, if you're going to go out and say, conditioning is pops of hardcore demanding training. Cardio is traditionally linked to like long-term 10-mile, 6-mile marathons, half marathons. This prolonged release of cortisol is going to eat muscle for many other reasons other than just cortisol. But the cortisol hormone itself, when released in a prolonged state, because of this chronic, overdoing on cardio, like the classic walking into a Gold's Gym and seeing somebody every day on the elliptical who just is on the elliptical for like 3 straight hours. This is overdoing, right, the cortisol limits, and you're going to lead to, this is when cortisol becomes the, evil muscle-eating hormone. There's a big difference, it's a dramatic difference. It's like the same thing. Take the sun for a metaphor. People say not getting sun is worse than smoking. Okay, not getting vitamin D is worse than smoking. And then people say being in the sun for too long will cause cancer. Okay, it's the same exact conversation. It's just the right amount at the right time, all right, will be something that's healthy for you. The proper amount of sun every day will restore in the biggest organ of your body, okay? The biggest organ, your skin, one of the major 11 organ systems. Your skin needs the sunlight in order to be healthy. If you get too little of it, you're not going to be healthy. If you get way too much of it, you're not going to be healthy. It's the same conversation when it comes to cortisol. Micro-acute stressors. Stress is a beautiful thing. You should voluntarily put yourself in positions to stress your body for Micro doses, 100%. All right? This is like the same thing with the cold plunge. Going in for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 90 seconds. Even as a woman, you're going to inflict that same response. Now, if you go in for 7 minutes, 8 minutes, this is when we start to get problems. So it's the same thing. I'm going to keep going here because it's a constant throughout all health, and it's a constant. It drives me absolutely crazy, especially when PhDs are talking this way, when they're absolutists, right? When it's like absolutely this is the wrong way and absolutely this is the right way. It's every conversation is somewhere in the middle. It's just not a sexy conversation. We're probably not going to go viral here on Burn Bootcamp Podcast because we're not going to say things like that. We're just going to be in the middle and tell you the exact truth. Not that it's not having an opinion. It's just that when you, there's a pH balance in our body, okay? A pH balance. If you're too alkaline, right? If you're too alkaline, that's a bad thing. You're going to die. And if you're too acidic, you're going to die. There's a neutral pH balance. Chelsea, what is it? 7.42,
Yeah,
I believe, is the
7.42.
human balance for pH. So all these companies, the Ascension 9.5, yeah, this is why we partner with Defiance Fuel, because they're 7.4. Okay, they're the human pH level. 9.5 in your water selection and paying 50 cents more because it's 9.5 is duping you. It is not, as soon as that body, I don't need to explain the science behind it. I know it, but it's too much for today. As soon as it hits your stomach, it's going to regulate anyways. It's not making your body more alkaline. You can't like go out drinking one night all night and have a very acidic body the next day and then drink 9.5 pH water and hope to balance it out. That's not the way that it works. It's just marketing. It's just people trying to move a narrative, get more subscribers on Instagram, have an opinion, having a stance, plant their flag into something, and respect for all opinion, but it's not necessarily always the best, most well-rounded narrative for you to hear as an individual we here are obsessed about your health and your happiness. And so we're not going to whiplash you one way and then whiplash you another way and sit here and pretend like cortisol doesn't have the same kind of spectrum that all things have. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean, Trish?
Yeah, I mean, I know we've talked about cortisol, and I think it was a podcast like 2 weeks ago or so. Maybe we can drop it in the chat, but you gave a really good definition, and I know we had some good conversation around how it's stress, and you have different stressors in your life, and you can't just get rid of all the stress in your life. So anyways, I think we should link that so people can go back and educate themselves a little bit more.
Yeah, because we did go. Yeah, we went way deeper into acute stress.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, versus prolonged stress. And we also talked about involuntary stress too.
Yeah.
Like when something traumatic happens in your life. And cortisol is also a big hormone that impacts that stress as well.
And I think for anyone that, because I have friends that, blame like not doing conditioning because they don't want to increase their cortisol. So anyone who battles that and is just trying to figure out what is true, go back and listen to that episode because that really helped me at least have something to say when I have friends that are just not thinking the right way that they should be and helping educate them as well.